My name is Linda Harper, and at 70, I truly believed I had transcended the battles of external validation. My life in Chicago was a testament to defiant joy. Harper Creative, my strategic design firm, had blossomed into a global leader, now commanding respect in an industry often obsessed with fleeting trends and youthful energy. My beautiful townhouse in Ukrainian Village was a tranquil haven, a personal sanctuary that mirrored the profound inner peace I had cultivated through years of relentless self-reinvention. I was sailing on Lake Michigan, traveling the world, deeply connected to my children and grandchildren, and more vibrantly alive than I had ever been. The clarity, forged by years of personal transformations and the clarifying fires of menopause, meant I saw social dynamics not as a source of anxiety, but as an opportunity for subtle observation and quiet, confident engagement. Then came the invitation, a thick, glossy card, arriving unexpectedly in my mail. It was for my 30-year college reunion, our class of XX at the University of Chicago. Part of me balked. Reunions, I knew, were often a performance, a showcase of predictable successes and subtle hierarchies. They were rarely a space for genuine connection. But a tiny, almost nostalgic part of me was curious. A thread of memory pulled at me, the younger Linda, brilliant but often overlooked, trying to find her footing in a world that often celebrated the loudest voices. I wondered what it would feel like to walk back into that echo chamber, armed with the quiet certainty of my radically authentic life. I went, not seeking validation, but out of a subtle sense of completion. But even a lifetime of quiet triumphs can't always prepare you for the unique sting of collegiate social dynamics. From the moment I stepped into the glittering ballroom of the Hilton Chicago, the old patterns asserted themselves. Conversations flowed around me. Old cliques reformed, their laughter echoing through the vast space. The woman who had defied every expectation, found myself once again subtly ignored. My quiet success, my unbound life, seemed to make me invisible. They saw me, but they didn't see me. They thought I was merely another familiar face from the past, politely out of step with their carefully curated present. They had no idea that their casual dismissal was setting the stage for a moment of profound, cosmic irony. They were about to learn that when you ignore the quiet ones, you sometimes miss the very architects of unexpected legacies. And I was about to be called on stage, not for a superficial reunion photo, but as the unsung hero of a story they never knew existed. Before I tell you every single, satisfying, and meticulously executed detail of how a night of subtle exclusion transformed into my most profound, public vindication, I want to invite you into this space. If you've ever walked into a room full of your past, only to find yourself still struggling for recognition, if you've ever felt your quiet impact go unnoticed by those who should know better, then hit that subscribe button. This channel is a sanctuary for the unseen visionaries, a gathering place for women who are reclaiming their power and proving that true relevance is earned through authentic impact, not through superficial recognition. You won't want to miss seeing how this unfolds. Part 1. The invisible return. The invitation had sat on my counter for weeks, a thick, glossy cardstock beckoning me back to a past I thought I had fully shed. My 30-year college reunion for the University of Chicago. 3 decades. A lifetime for some, a mere blink for others. I was 70 now, my life a rich tapestry woven with threads of purposeful work, profound self-discovery, and deep, unconditional love from my family. Harper Creative, my strategic design firm, had blossomed into a global leader, operating from vibrant hubs in Chicago and New York. I consulted for multinational corporations and visionary startups alike, sought after for my unique blend of creative foresight and grounded human insight. My life in Ukrainian Village was a tranquil haven, my garden a lush testament to continued growth. My health was robust, my spirit unbound, my wisdom acknowledged. Yet, the idea of returning to my alma mater, to the place where I had navigated the awkward currents of late adolescence and early adulthood, stirred a complex mix of emotions. College had been a crucible for me. I was a quiet, observant student, brilliant in my chosen fields of art and sociology, but never particularly popular. My early life had been defined by a subtle, almost pervasive invisibility. I wasn't the loudest, the flashiest, or the most socially adept. I learned to watch, to listen, to observe the patterns of human behavior from the periphery. My sharp mind, rather than being expressed in boisterous pronouncements, had been honed in quiet libraries and solitary thought. David, my ex-husband, had been a star in our class, charismatic, ambitious, already exhibiting the charm that would propel his career. My subsequent life with him, marked by a pervasive need to serve his ambitions and conform to his expectations, often left me feeling further unseen. Even after my divorce and my subsequent radical transformation, that tiny seed of past invisibility lingered, occasionally resurfacing in unexpected moments. A reunion, I knew, was prime ground for that. Part of me hesitated. Reunions, from what I'd heard, were often thinly veiled showcases of conventional success. Who had the highest-paying job? The most impressive spouse? The most polished children? It felt like a competition I no longer had any interest in entering. My true triumphs, divorcing David, building a thriving business against all odds, embarking on a solo cross-continental motorcycle trip, reclaiming my health from a dismissive medical system, setting fierce boundaries with my children, learning to truly act my age by radically defying all expectations. These were not things easily summed up in a 5-minute conversation during a cocktail hour. They required nuance, context, a willingness to see beyond the superficial. A willingness I suspected many of my former classmates no longer possessed, if they ever did. But then another thought emerged. The clarifying fire of menopause, which had reshaped my perspective in my 50s, now burned with a gentle, confident glow. My life was so truly, deeply authentic. Why should I fear stepping back into a context that once made me feel small? This wasn't about seeking validation. This was about a final act of quiet defiance. It was about standing confidently in the truth of my unbound self, even if others failed to see it. It was about a deeper sense of completion, a final letting go of the shadow of my past. The reunion gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Hilton Chicago on Michigan Avenue. As I stepped through the ornate doors, the sheer scale of the event was overwhelming. The vast space pulsed with the hum of 1,000 simultaneous conversations, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the clinking of glasses. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and unspoken aspirations. Hundreds of people, familiar strangers, were everywhere. The past, meticulously preserved in time, suddenly swirled around me. This was a living, breathing time capsule, and I, the woman who had traversed decades of profound change, was stepping right back into its midst. I felt a subtle thrill. I was ready, or so I thought. Part 2. The echo chamber of memory. My entrance into the ballroom of the Hilton Chicago was quiet, unremarkable. Despite the internal sense of peace and fierce self-possession I now carried, I was still fundamentally a private person. I wasn't one to make a grand entrance. I sought a quiet corner, allowing my eyes to adjust, observing the swirling currents of activity. And what I saw almost immediately was disconcerting. The reunion atmosphere was precisely as I had anticipated, and yet, somehow, even more intense. It was an echo chamber of the past, filled with the predictable rhythms of social maneuvering. Cliques, formed in the crucible of dorm life and shared classes, had reformed instantly, like molecular bonds snapping back into place. Laughter rang out from tight-knit circles, punctuated by exclamations of recognition and excited shouts of, "You haven't changed a bit." A lie universally accepted at reunions. People, in their eagerness to reconnect with familiar comfort, gravitated towards those who mirrored their own journeys. I began to circulate, a polite smile on my face, genuinely open to connection. I sought out faces I remembered, some with affection, some with curiosity. "Hello, I'm Linda Harper, class of XX. I'd say, my voice calm, but infused with the vibrancy of my present. The responses were uniform, polite, but distant. Old acquaintances would squint, nod vaguely. their eyes searching for a more prominent, more easily categorizable face. "Oh, Linda. Right. Good to see you." Their gaze would slide past me, landing on someone more overtly successful in their traditional terms, a doctor with a perfectly coiffed spouse, a lawyer with a child at an Ivy League, a financier who just bought a new yacht. Conversations would often turn away mid-sentence. My polite inquiries about their lives would be answered perfunctorily, then immediately redirected to a more exciting topic, or towards another, more outwardly impressive classmate who had just entered their orbit. I'd find myself standing on the periphery, watching a circle of former classmates suddenly tighten their invisible ranks, their bodies subtly turning inwards, excluding me from their shared laughter. My attempts to join a conversation would be met with a kind of polite, confused silence, then a rapid, dismissive pivot to another topic. It was as if my very presence, my quiet confidence, subtly disturbed their established social harmony. It wasn't malice, not overtly. It was something far more insidious. It was the collective weight of their own rigid expectations, their narrow definitions of success. I, who had built a national firm, sailed oceans, and rode motorcycles across continents, was still Linda Harper, the quiet one. The one who didn't fit. The one they couldn't neatly categorize within their predetermined boxes of achievement. My non-traditional life, my radical path, made me hard to slot. And anything outside their comfortable framework was simply ignored. I saw old classmates bragging about their stable, predictable, seemingly successful lives. "I've been at the same firm for 25 years, hitting all my targets," one man boomed, a golf pro at a country club in the suburbs. "Finally paying off the mortgage. Just got the kids through college. Best decision ever." He then looked at me, my solo status and unconventional path obviously apparent. "Oh, you do design, right? Like, for Etsy? That's nice. That must be fulfilling." His tone was polite, but his gaze and the dismissal in his words suggested he saw it as a quaint hobby, certainly not a robust, global enterprise. The slight was profound and intentional. My initial feelings of confident anticipation began to give way to a familiar, aching hollowness. Even after all my battles, all my transformations, all the unshakable peace I had cultivated, was I still destined to be invisible in certain contexts? To be overlooked by the very people who had shared my formative years? It felt like a subtle echo of my younger self, trying desperately to be seen, to be understood, only to be met with polite dismissal. The subtle sting of disappointment began to morph into a rising tide of discomfort and a familiar sense of cold, righteous anger. This was the precise type of subtle microaggression that fueled my every revolution. And tonight, it was happening in plain sight. Part 3. The weight of invisible threads and the quiet retreat. The cocktail hour stretched into what felt like an eternity, each polite smile and subtle slight adding to the accumulating weight of my invisibility. The conversation, an endless loop of career milestones, impressive children, and predictable retirement plans, whirled around me, leaving me on the periphery. I would attempt to offer a contribution, a nuanced observation gleaned from my global travels or my work with cutting-edge tech companies, only to find my words swallowed by the din, or dismissed with a cursory nod, before the conversation moved on, effortlessly, without me. The sting was real. This wasn't the kind of raw, burning betrayal I'd experienced from David or Marcus Thorne. This was far more insidious, the slow, quiet erosion of perceived worth, the subtle invalidation of my very being by 1,000 tiny cuts. My mind, usually a fortress of clarity, felt strangely vulnerable, susceptible to the insidious power of this collective disregard. A dull ache began behind my eyes, not a hot flash, but the weary pulse of mental exhaustion. The ballroom, once glittering with possibility, now felt like a gilded cage, confining me within a social hierarchy I thought I had long since escaped. I tried to reconnect with a few women I vaguely remembered being kind to me in college. Martha, a soft-spoken literature major, had once shared notes with me for a difficult exam. "Martha," I'd said, approaching her table. "Linda Harper. We were in Professor Peterson's romantics class together. She'd smiled vaguely, then her eyes had flickered nervously to a group of more popular women who were calling her name from across the room. "Oh, Linda. So good to see you. Sorry, they're just calling me." And she was gone, swallowed by the siren call of her established clique. Another, Susan, who had been my roommate for a semester before transferring. "Susan, do you remember me?" "Linda." She looked at me, then at her husband, a corporate lawyer who was deep in conversation with a man discussing his yacht.
"Oh,
"Linda.
right."
You look well." She didn't offer a hug. She didn't invite me into her circle. She just gave me a quick, assessing glance, deemed me not worth her husband's or her friend's attention, and turned back to her conversation. I was simply a discarded acquaintance, a fleeting memory from a distant past. The sense of isolation intensified. This wasn't the beautiful solitude of solo travel, the profound stillness of meditation in a remote monastery. This was the aching loneliness of being unseen in a crowded room. My true, vibrant life, my triumphs, my adventures, my boundless joy, remained invisible, unacknowledged, trapped within the confines of my own quiet observation. My authenticity, which I believed to be my greatest strength, was now rendering me profoundly, uncomfortably alone. I made my apologies to the vague acquaintances I'd briefly encountered, claiming a headache. I retreated to a quiet lounge area off the main ballroom, a dimly lit space overlooking Michigan Avenue. The glittering lights of the Chicago skyline stretched before me, a familiar, yet now profoundly indifferent, tableau. I sank onto a plush armchair, pulling my small clutch bag into my lap. I took out my phone, my anchor, the window to my real life. I scrolled through photos. Me, laughing, covered in mud, after a challenging mountain bike trail in Costa Rica. Me, standing proudly in front of my gleaming BMW motorcycle, parked precariously on a cliff edge in New Zealand. Me, conducting a complex brand strategy session with a global team on Zoom, my voice clear, my face radiating authority. My vibrant garden in Ukrainian village, bursting with the colors of early autumn. My granddaughter, Clara, her face smeared with chocolate, giggling into my lap. This was my truth. This was my hard-won, unapologetic existence. It was a million miles from the superficial preening and petty social maneuvering happening in the ballroom. The disconnect was jarring. The authenticity of my life screamed from the screen of my phone, a silent rebuke to the vapid conversations I had just endured. And then, the disappointment began to morph. Not into despair, but into a familiar, cold, clarifying anger. An anger that burned away the self-pity, leaving behind a sharp, strategic intellect. The same anger that had fueled my divorce. The same clarity that had helped me dismantle corporate arrogance and assert boundaries with my children. This was the pattern. This was the cycle. And I, Linda Harper, was done with it. I was done trying to be seen by those who refused to look. I thought about the trajectory of my life. My quiet beginnings. My unseen efforts. My eventual triumphs. Always hard-won. Always against a tide of assumption. And then a memory resurfaced. A specific name. Arthur Hayes. Arthur had been in my philosophy class in college. He was quiet, brilliant, eccentric, an absolute genius, but socially awkward, often overlooked by the popular crowd. He had a revolutionary idea for an early software company, a visionary concept that he struggled to articulate, to package into something tangible. I, the quiet design student with a knack for strategy, had, almost instinctively, offered him some advice. It was a small act of kindness, a purely altruistic gesture. I had helped him visualize his data, craft his presentation for a student entrepreneurship competition. He was brilliant. I just helped him clarify it. It was a fleeting, almost insignificant collaboration, one I had long since dismissed from my memory. But it was there. And now, the memory resurfaced with unexpected power. Because Arthur Hayes, I had dimly remembered seeing on the reunion program, was tonight's keynote speaker, and a leading voice in global AI. The ultimate irony was just beginning to unfold. My mind, sharp and utterly clear, began to calculate. Part 4. The silent architect's legacy. My strategic mind, now fully engaged, began to sift through the data points of my college past, connecting threads that had remained unnoticed for decades. Arthur Hayes. Quiet, brilliant, and often, like me, subtly overlooked by the dominant social circles. He had possessed an unparalleled intellectual capacity, a visionary mind, but lacked the outward polish, the aggressive self-promotion that often led to early recognition. I saw in him a kindred spirit, someone whose true power lay in the depths of their thought, rather than the loudness of their voice. I remembered the details of our brief, almost accidental collaboration. It was during our junior year, a specific project for an entrepreneurship class. Arthur had developed a groundbreaking algorithm for early data visualization, a concept almost unheard of at the time. His idea was revolutionary, truly disruptive. But his presentation of it was dense, academic, impenetrable to the average person. He struggled to convey its real-world value. He spoke in complex code, not compelling narrative. I had approached him in the library, a quiet gesture, recognizing his frustration. "Arthur," I'd said, "your idea is phenomenal. But if you want people to invest in it, they need to see it, not just understand the code. How about we work on the visual aspect? How about we design a presentation that literally makes your data come alive?" He had looked at me with bewildered surprise, then a flicker of hope. And so, we had worked for 3 intense days. Late nights in the university computer lab. I had helped him distill his complex algorithms into simple, powerful infographics. I designed the visual flow of his presentation, crafting a compelling narrative arc that showed not just the how of his technology, but the profound why. I taught him how to use metaphors, how to tell a story with data, how to create emotional resonance. I made him articulate his passion, not just his logic. My specific contribution, I recalled now, was crafting the opening lines of his pitch. Imagine a world where data isn't just numbers, but the heartbeat of a connected planet. It was bold, it was visionary, and it was pure Linda Harper. His presentation for the college entrepreneurship competition was a quiet triumph. He didn't win the grand prize, which went to a flashier, less innovative, but more socially connected team. But he gained something more important, a spark of true belief in his vision, and more subtly, the confidence to connect his brilliance to real-world impact. We had shaken hands afterwards, a quiet acknowledgement of shared intellectual synergy. Then, as life does, we had drifted apart. He went on to Stanford for his PhD, then into the nascent world of tech startups. I went on to my own career in graphic design, then into motherhood, and then into the profound complexities of reclaiming my own narrative. The collaboration was a distant, fond memory, quickly overshadowed by the noise and demands of daily life. Until now, I sat in the quiet lounge overlooking Michigan Avenue, my mind now fully focused, discarding the lingering sting of the classmates' dismissals. My attention turned to the detailed program for the reunion dinner tonight. The keynote speaker, Arthur Hayes, the CEO of Nexus AI. His rise had been meteoric. He was now a titan in the global artificial intelligence sector, a quiet billionaire known for his philanthropic endeavors and his relentless pursuit of authentic, impactful innovation. He was a force to be reckoned with. And he was based right here in Chicago. A connection started to form in my mind, profound and almost cosmic. My past, unseen contribution to his early success. He, too, had been an unseen force in his youth. My intuitive understanding of his core brilliance, my strategic ability to give his vision a powerful voice, had been a small, almost invisible catalyst in his own remarkable journey. I didn't expect him to remember me, or my help. Decades had passed. My contribution had been purely altruistic. He would have, by now, worked with hundreds of strategists, thousands of brilliant minds. Why would he remember one quiet college collaboration? But the thought lingered, a faint, tantalizing whisper of possibility. I had always worked in the quiet. My victories, my impacts, were often behind the scenes, unacknowledged by those who sought the spotlight. This entire reunion was about bringing those success stories into the glaring light. And perhaps, just perhaps, my quiet, foundational work had echoed in ways I could never have anticipated. My internal clarity intensified. This was not about demanding credit. This was about acknowledging truth. My objective wasn't to force recognition. It was simply to observe the keynote, to witness Arthur's journey, a mirror to my own. No expectations of personal validation, just a profound, quiet curiosity. The reunion, which had begun as a bitter reminder of past invisibility, was about to become something else entirely. A silent stage for an unexpected, poetic, and utterly profound revelation. I had learned over decades that true impact often comes, not with a bang, but with a whisper. And tonight, I was ready to listen. Part 5. The hum of a shared narrative as the cocktail hour finally ended, giving way to the formal dinner. A faint undercurrent of nervous anticipation permeated the grand ballroom of the Hilton. The lights dimmed slightly, creating a more intimate ambience. I made a quiet entrance, finding a table on the periphery, a small island of observation in a sea of mingling and networking. My chosen seat offered a clear view of the stage, allowing me to fully absorb Arthur Hayes' keynote address without being drawn back into the exhausting social dance. The hum of chatter continued, but it was now laced with an expectant energy. Across the room, I spotted Marcus Sterling, the visionary CEO of Unity Ventures, one of my current, prominent clients, for whom I still consulted as a lead brand strategist. He was engaged in an animated conversation with a prominent tech investor. He saw me and offered a subtle, respectful nod, a small moment of external validation that felt like a quiet anchor amidst the swirling currents of my classmates' dismissiveness. It was a tangible reminder of my real, present-day relevance, a quiet antidote to the sting of invisibility. The dinner service began, a carefully orchestrated ballet of polite efficiency. The clinking of cutlery, the soft murmur of polite conversation, the low drone of elevator music. Then, a voice boomed from the stage, amplified by the sound system, cutting through the general noise. It was the university president delivering a polished, effusive introduction. He listed Arthur Hayes' prodigious achievements, his groundbreaking work in artificial intelligence, his vast philanthropic endeavors, his company, Nexus AI, which was now a global powerhouse. Arthur Hayes walked onto the stage, a quiet, almost unassuming presence, a stark contrast to the bombast of his introduction. He was in his early 50s now, his hair slightly graying, his face lined with the deep etchings of relentless thought. He was impeccably dressed, but his posture held the familiar, slightly awkward intensity of a man more comfortable with algorithms than applause. He had the same kind, intelligent eyes I remembered. He exuded a profound sense of authenticity, a quiet gravity that commanded respect. He wasn't a performer. He was a truth-teller. He began to speak, his voice calm, measured, almost conversational. He didn't boast. He didn't parade his achievements. He spoke, instead, of his journey, of the relentless pursuit of an idea, a vision that began in a cluttered dorm room 3 decades ago. He spoke of the solitude of innovation, the countless hours of doubt, the small, almost invisible moments of serendipity that, in hindsight, defined his path. His words resonated deeply with me. They spoke to my own life of unseen labor, of quiet commitment, of victories hard-won away from the glare of public recognition. He was painting a canvas that reflected my own profound existence. He spoke about the early struggles of his startup, about trying to translate complex technological breakthroughs into concepts that investors and the public could grasp, about the overwhelming challenge of finding a unique voice in a crowded, competitive market, about a core idea that he knew, instinctively, was brilliant, but felt abstract, elusive. His eyes scanned the audience, a thoughtful, reflective gaze. "I was lost in the data," he said, his voice dropping, tinged with a raw honesty that silenced the remaining dinner chatter. "I could see the patterns, but I couldn't make anyone else see them." I was trying to talk to the market in binary code when it needed human poetry. I was so convinced of the logic, I failed to grasp the importance of story. A small shiver ran down my spine. His words were cutting directly to the core of my contribution, almost verbatim. He was talking about the genesis of his vision. My subtle heart rate increased. I was utterly captivated. This was more than a speech. This was a shared narrative. A shared understanding of the intricate dance between abstract brilliance and compelling communication. He was building his story, pixel by careful pixel. And the story was profoundly mine. Part 6. The unveiling of the unseen architect. Arthur Hayes's voice resonated through the hushed ballroom, each word carrying the weight of profound truth. He spoke of the frustration, the isolation of being a young visionary, utterly consumed by complex ideas but utterly unable to communicate them. My ideas were just numbers, he said, his voice raw with memory. Algorithms in a vacuum. I believed in them with every fiber of my being, but no one else could see the heartbeat within the data. No one could grasp the true potential. No one could feel the pulse of a connected planet that I envisioned. A cold wave washed over me, a physical sensation that rooted me to my seat. Imagine a world where data isn't just numbers, but the heartbeat of a connected planet. Those were my words. My very first contribution to his journey, etched in my memory. He was speaking my truth. He was recalling my vision. And in that moment, all the noise of the reunion, the sting of dismissal, the decades of unnoticed contributions, all of it faded into complete insignificance. All that mattered was his voice, weaving a narrative that was fundamentally, inextricably mine. He continued, his voice gaining strength, tinged now with profound gratitude. I was lost. And then, one afternoon, in the university library, a quiet voice cut through the noise of my own confusion. A classmate, someone I barely knew. She saw the core truth when I was lost in data. She saw the human connection where I saw only code. She took my complex ideas, my abstract brilliance, and she gave them a voice. She gave them a story. She designed a presentation that didn't just explain my technology, but made it sing. She showed me how to talk to people, not just programmers. His words pierced through the vast ballroom, holding everyone utterly captive. He spoke of the simple infographics I designed, the clear, concise messaging frameworks I had developed for his student pitch. He recounted the exact opening lines I had written for him. She told me, Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion, imagine a world where data isn't just numbers, but the heartbeat of a connected planet. He paused, his gaze sweeping the audience, then resting, piercingly, directly on me. Those words, that vision, it was the master password to my career. It was the genesis of my entire company. It was the single most important investment anyone ever made in me, not of money, but of insight, of connection, of profound, empathetic clarity. The entire ballroom was utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Hundreds of faces, once absorbed in superficial conversations, were now frozen, their expressions a mix of rapt attention and dawning bewilderment. He lowered his microphone slightly, his eyes still fixed on me. And then he smiled. A deep, genuine, profoundly grateful smile that reached his intelligent, kind eyes. It was a recognition so pure, so utterly untainted by expectation, that it took my breath away. He hadn't just remembered. He had understood. He had valued it. And he had cherished it. For 3 decades. He then took a step forward, raising his arm, not with a triumphant gesture, but with a respectful, almost deferential motion, his hand pointing directly at me. And that person, he announced, his voice clear and ringing with emotion, resonating with a power that shook the very foundations of the room, is here tonight. My first and most important investor. Not of money, but of vision. My true co-founder, if you will. The unsung architect of Nexus AI's founding philosophy. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in acknowledging Linda Harper. A collective gasp, audible even above the profound silence, rippled through the audience. Confusion warred with disbelief on 1,000 faces. Then, slowly, uncertainly, a few people started to clap. The applause grew, gaining momentum, until it swelled into a deafening, standing ovation. The light of the ballroom, once distant, now seemed to converge entirely on me. My classmates, the ones who had ignored me, the ones who had walked past me as if I was a ghost, the ones who had dismissed my very presence. Their faces registered a bewildering array of emotions: shock, disbelief, a dawning realization, utter horror, and frantic, scrambling attempts to recollect knowing me. They twisted in their seats, craning their necks, desperate to get a clearer look at the invisible woman they had just spent the entire evening overlooking. The very architects of their dismissal were now trapped, witnessing my spectacular, unexpected, utterly public vindication. The irony was a raw, unfiltered triumph. I sat frozen, overwhelmed by the profound, cosmic justice that was unfolding around me. Part 7. The seismic aftermath and the symphony of apologies. The thunderous applause felt both overwhelming and incredibly affirming. For a woman who had spent decades as the unseen force, the quiet strategist, the silent power behind someone else's success, being called out publicly by a tech visionary and identified as his first and most important investor, was a profound, almost surreal experience. I slowly rose from my seat, my legs a little shaky, a complex mix of surprise, deep validation, and an overwhelming sense of cosmic justice washing over me. I wasn't walking to the stage as Linda Harper, the former invisible student. I was walking as Linda Harper, the undeniable force. As I moved towards the stage, Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Unity Ventures, my primary client, who was sitting at a prominent table near the stage, met my gaze. He gave me a deep, respectful nod, a small, proud smile touching his lips. He understood the profound significance of this moment. He knew my capabilities. He knew my wisdom. His silent affirmation was a powerful testament to the genuine connections I had forged outside the superficial social circles of my past. On stage, Arthur Hayes met me halfway. He extended his hand, and when I took it, he pulled me into a genuine, heartfelt hug. His gratitude was palpable. He looked at me, his eyes shining. "Thank you, Linda," he whispered, "just for me. Thank you for everything. For seeing me. For giving me that first blueprint. It was invaluable." He turned to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the brilliance I was speaking of. This is the mind that helped define everything." I offered a brief, gracious statement. I didn't grandstand. I didn't gloat. I spoke about the power of collaboration, the value of unseen contributions, and the importance of recognizing true potential, regardless of external labels or social standing. I thanked Arthur for his profound generosity in acknowledging my past contributions. My words were calm, dignified, and utterly devoid of any bitterness towards those who had dismissed me. My quiet presence, my simple truth, was enough. As I returned to my table, the transformation in my classmates' reactions was absolute. It was a dizzying kaleidoscope of emotions. Their initial shock gave way to utter embarrassment. The faces that had passed me over without a flicker of recognition were now etched, with scrambling attempts to recollect knowing me. My phone began to buzz in my clutch bag, vibrating constantly with incoming calls and frantic texts. I ignored them all, allowing myself to simply observe the stunning recalibration of their social hierarchy. "Linda! Oh my God! I knew that was you." My former roommate, Susan, whose smile had been so distant earlier, was suddenly at my side, her face flushed, her voice too loud. "You haven't aged a day. I knew you'd be a success. I was telling Bob just this morning, I bet Linda Harper is going places. Do you remember that one time?" She launched into a fabricated memory, a desperate attempt to create a shared past. I smiled. "It's good to see you, Susan," I said politely, a subtle detachment in my voice. I allowed the pretense, knowing she was grasping for a connection to the man who had just dominated the stage. My other classmates converged. The woman who had bragged about her husband's golf course membership now tried to explain her complex corporate structure, desperately seeking my approval. The man who had implied my business was an Etsy hobby now tried to network with me, subtly hinting at investment opportunities. The desperate energy was palpable. The sheer audacity of their sudden interest, born not of genuine connection but of perceived proximity to power, was breathtaking. I moved through the rest of the night with a quiet grace, engaging briefly, politely, but firmly. I offered no more than pleasantries. I didn't remind them of their prior dismissals. My composure, my lack of recrimination, was a more potent form of vengeance than any spoken accusation. The silent truth of my validated worth hung in the air. The keynote speaker had given me the ultimate social leverage, and I, the invisible woman, was wielding it with quiet, devastating precision. My former world, built on superficiality, was finally recognizing true value. And it was paying attention. The irony was exquisite. My quiet presence was a symphony of whispers, of truth. Part 8. The rewriting of their narratives and the uncomfortable calls. The night continued its surreal trajectory. After Arthur Hayes's breathtaking acknowledgement, the reunion atmosphere fundamentally transformed. The casual cliques, the dismissive chatter, the subtle attempts to establish hierarchy based on predictable career paths, all of it dissolved. Suddenly, every eye in the room seemed to be on me, the formerly invisible woman. It was less about who they were and more about who I was connected to. The shift was jarring, profoundly gratifying, and, in its own way, deeply unsettling. My phone, which had remained largely silent throughout the cocktail hour, became a buzzing symphony of frantic activity. Classmates I hadn't spoken to in decades, some I barely remembered, flooded my inbox with texts and voicemails. The messages ranged from overly effusive congratulations to desperate attempts at recollection. Linda. Oh my God, I knew that was you. A text from a woman named Karen, whom I vaguely remembered as a sorority sister, read. I always said you were brilliant. So happy for your success. We have to catch up soon. She always said I was brilliant. I mused, the irony sharp. She hadn't returned a single call in 30 years. My former roommate, Susan, whose cold glance had dismissed me earlier, was now trying to cling to my arm. Linda, do you remember that crazy semester we lived in the same quad? I always knew you were destined for greatness. You just had that quiet brilliance. I was telling Bob just last night, Linda Harper is going places. Her fabricated memories and desperate attempts to create shared history were transparent, but her sincerity in wanting to now associate with me was undeniable. I navigated the rest of the night with a careful, gracious composure. I was polite, friendly, but fundamentally unavailable for their frantic attempts at reconnection. I offered brief, generic responses to their questions about my career. Harper Creative is thriving, thank you, and my travels, yes, the world is quite beautiful when you experience it freely. I didn't engage in protracted conversations. I didn't recount my full story. My silence, my simple, authentic presence, was more powerful than any detailed explanation could have been. Their eager consumption of my newfound validation, gleaned from Arthur Hayes's words, confirmed that their interest was transactional, not genuine. The dynamics within the popular cliques that had once excluded me were fascinating to observe. The social queen bees, the alpha males, the ones who had reveled in their conventional successes, now looked visibly uncomfortable, their faces flushed with a mixture of shame and envy. Their carefully curated narratives of effortless superiority had been utterly dismantled by a single, public acknowledgement of an invisible woman's profound impact. Their carefully constructed social order was in chaos. The phone calls continued in the days and weeks after the reunion. Emails, invitations to exclusive golf games and members-only clubs, all flooded my inbox. Linda, Arthur Hayes' story about you is truly inspiring. I'd love to pick your brain about that unseen contribution concept. Perhaps a discreet lunch at the Chicago Club. The irony was exquisite. They wanted to pick my brain. about the very wisdom they had consistently overlooked, dismissed, or outright ignored for 3 decades. I responded to none of the new overtures. My purpose for attending the reunion had been fulfilled, a quiet reentry, and an utterly unexpected, profoundly public validation that required no words from me, only presence. I was done with external validation. My peace, my joy, my self-worth were no longer contingent on external recognition. They were an internal constant. My long-term impact, once invisible, was now spectacularly public, but that was a bonus, not the goal. The value was always there. They just hadn't seen it. Now they did. Part 9. The genesis of true impact and the radiance of authenticity. My life, after the profound public validation at the reunion, entered a new phase of expansive purpose. My reputation as a strategic visionary and a grounded, authentic leader soared beyond anything I could have imagined. I became a sought-after speaker at global tech and design conferences, not just for my business acumen, but for my unique perspective on authentic leadership, resilience, and the invaluable wisdom gleaned from profound personal transformation. My story, once privately known by a select few, became a public testament to the power of unwavering self-worth. Arthur Hayes, my accidental champion, became a true friend. We often met for quiet dinners in Chicago, discussing not just business, but the deeper philosophies of impact, legacy, and purpose. He genuinely saw me as a peer, a rare soul who understood the unique challenges of true leadership in a world often dominated by superficiality. We began collaborating on several pro bono projects for various Chicago charities, blending his AI brilliance with my human-centered design to create truly impactful solutions for underserved communities. He sometimes marveled at my insights. "Linda," he'd say, "your ability to cut through the noise, to see the emotional core of things, it's uncanny. I learn more from you in an hour than from months of data reports." This authentic recognition, rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose, was my truest reward. It affirmed that my unique blend of wisdom, empathy, and strategic clarity was not a weakness, as David had once claimed, nor was it outdated, as my initial colleagues had implied. It was, in fact, my greatest strength. Menopause, far from dimming my light, had concentrated it, burning away the unnecessary, leaving behind a diamond-sharp intuition. My influence permeated the academic world as well. I guest lectured at the University of Chicago, my alma mater, speaking not just to design students, but to business and philosophy majors, advocating for unseen contributions and the power of authentic voice. I used my own journey as a case study: the quiet student, the invisible wife, the overlooked consultant, the emotional woman, all culminating in the unwavering presence of a leader whose true impact came from deep, unwavering self-knowledge. The reunion, designed to showcase conventional, often superficial, successes, had inadvertently served as the ultimate platform for me to illustrate the power of quiet authenticity. It was a cosmic irony, a powerful testament to the universe's unique way of delivering justice. My classmates, who had spent the night validating each other's predictable narratives, were forced to witness the undeniable proof of a life lived unbound, truly, radically free. My silence, once interpreted as weakness, had become the vast, pregnant space from which my loudest truths emerged. My long-term impact, once invisible, was now resoundingly, irrevocably public. My self-worth, now fully independent of any external validation, radiated from me like a quiet sun. The constant fear of being overlooked had completely dissolved. I had earned my place, not through boasting, but through genuine, undeniable contribution. The quiet strength forged in the crucible of my life's transformations had been tested on a public stage, and it had passed with breathtaking grace. This was the true genesis of my lasting impact, not just on my firm or my clients, but on the countless individuals I inspired, simply by living my truth out loud for the entire world to see. Part 10. The unfurling of her true radiance. I am now 73. My life in Chicago continues to be a vibrant testament to an unbound spirit. Harper Creative flourishes, a beacon of purpose-driven design, attracting talent and clients who value integrity and innovation above all else. My home in Ukrainian village is a vibrant sanctuary, its garden bursting with life, its walls echoing with the quiet hum of creative flow and genuine connection. I still find moments of profound peace on my sailboat on Lake Michigan, my gaze stretching across the boundless water, reflecting the endless horizons of my own spirit. My relationship with Sarah, my oldest friend, has settled into a new, authentic rhythm. We no longer meet in crowded cafes where she subtly judges my life choices. Instead, she visits me in my home, genuinely eager to hear about my adventures, to connect on a deeper level. She now understands that acting my age meant, for me, living fully, wildly, without regret. She admires my journey, sometimes with a wistful regret for her own path not taken, but always with genuine affection. Our friendship, stripped of pretense, has found a more profound connection, one built on the acceptance of individual journeys. My children, Mark and Emily, now successful adults with their own growing families, continue to lean on me not for guidance on what they should do, but for inspiration on how to simply be. They have fully embraced my philosophy of authentic living, often citing my story to their own children about what true courage looks like. My grandchildren, now navigating their own path, look at me with wide, admiring eyes. They see a grandmother who embodies boundless possibility, a living testament to joyful defiance, a woman whose life is a vibrant masterpiece. This, I realized, is my most profound legacy, not money, not titles, but the living example of unscripted joy and radical self-sovereignty. Arthur Hayes, my inadvertent champion, remains a cherished friend and collaborator. Our continued work on pro bono projects has touched countless lives in Chicago, cementing a legacy not just of technological innovation, but of profound human impact. He continues to speak of my unique insight, his praise unwavering, always emphasizing my role as the foundational architect of his true vision. His genuine, profound acknowledgement, first delivered on that reunion stage, continues to resonate through my life, a constant reminder that true impact, quietly cultivated, will always, eventually, find its undeniable voice. The path of my life, once so neatly defined by societal expectations and subtle familial pressures, is now boundless. I am no longer just Linda Harper, the one who shed a marriage or sold a company. I am Linda Harper, the woman who embraced her age as an invitation to radical self-discovery. The silent change was not a diminishment. It was an expansion. It was the quiet, roaring liberation of a spirit finally unleashed. And the road ahead, for me, stretches infinitely, filled with adventure, purpose, and the exhilarating hum of a life lived exactly on my own terms. My journey continues unbounded, unscripted, and undeniably, wonderfully mine. My life, now a beacon for others, proves that visibility isn't granted, it's earned, through the relentless pursuit of authentic selfhood. Linda turns to address the camera directly. She is in a sleek, modern, yet warmly inviting space, possibly her Chicago office or home studio. Behind her, a prestigious award or a framed magazine cover with her photo is visible. She radiates quiet confidence and undeniable power, a subtle, serene smile on her face. Have you ever walked into a reunion or any social gathering, only to find yourself subtly ignored, overlooked, or dismissed by those who should know your worth? Did you ever feel like your quiet achievements, your unconventional path, simply didn't fit into their narrow definition of success? And what was the moment, that quiet, searing realization, when your invisibility became the fuel for your most profound act of self-reclamation? Tell me your story in the comments below. Let's talk about how we navigate social settings where our authenticity might be uncomfortable for others, and how we find profound validation not in the recognition we seek, but in the truth of our lived experience. Your story of finding your voice and your power amidst the echoes of your past might be the exact inspiration someone else needs to do the same. And if you're ready to prove that your quiet strength is your greatest superpower, if you're ready to command attention without seeking it, make sure you subscribe to the Silent Change After 50. We are building a powerful community where women over 50 are breaking free, defining their own narratives, and proving that the most profound impact often comes from the most unexpected places. Join us.